Hello, welcome to PSR, People Speaking Rail. I'm Mike Baudendistel, head of Intermodal Solutions, and I'm joined as always by Joanna Marsh, who does editorial writing at FreightWaves. And today we're going to be speaking with Chris Joslyn, president of Run Rail, if we can get Chris's technical difficulties worked out. But first, Joanna, you wrote an article on Jim Vena.
Yeah, I did. Yeah, so it was an interesting time. I guess it was last week. It feels so long ago, but Union Pacific released its second quarter earnings. But right before it released its second quarter earnings, it had also announced that Jim Vena um, would be uh, uh, would be the next CEO of Union Pacific, replacing Lance Fritz, who will be there until August 13th. Yeah, and then Jim Vena, he was the chief operating officer at Union Pacific in 2019 and 2020. And before then, he spent a lot of time at Canadian Railway CN. I was there with Hunter Harrison, and I think he was there. His career has spanned 40 plus years. I'm not sure if all of it was at CN, but I think a significant chunk of it was. So yeah, so that's the big news happening in the one of the big pieces of news happening in the freight rail industry space here.
Yeah, and so kind of the question is, I mean, does this sort of signal where the company is going? I think that's kind of what people are reading into it. I mean, certainly he is a favorite among Wall Street. He have a stock chart that I think is kind of interesting if we can bring that up. But stocks surged, both here recently with his announcement, and I don't know how much of that was due to the second quarter earnings, but it also went up back in January of 2019. I remember that day the shares. I went back and looked at that. Shares were up 8.9% the day that Jim Vena was announced to join Union Pacific as the COO, and I think the reason for that is, like you said, I mean, his time at Canadian National, with Hunter Harrison, sort of maybe, put that in the category of being a Hunter Harrison disciple. There's a picture of Jim, and if you bring up the stock chart, you can see some of the stock price movements. You see there on the left. So the black line is Union Pacific share price, and the blue line, which is on the other axis, is the S&P 500. Sometimes it sort of trends right in line with it. But other times you see it doing better or worse than the S&P. And one of those times it was doing better was on the left-hand side, that red oval was right about when Jim Vena was announced that he would be joining Union Pacific as COO back in January 2019. And then you see on the right-hand side, you see that latest surge, that black line climbing pretty significantly from about $200 a share earlier this year to now $231.51. So head in the right direction, but it is interesting. You I think interviewed Tony Hatch to see his reaction. He always has an interesting take. What did Tony think about it?
Yeah. I felt like Tony kind of encapsulated what I think a number of people were thinking, if not chippers, which is that I think the announcement was surprising on several levels. On one hand, of course, it wasn't surprising in the sense that Union Pacific has been seeking to improve its service, and Jim Vena. Operations and service was sort of his thing when he was COO of Union Pacific. What else did Tony say? The interesting thing, I think it caught people off guard for several reasons. One was because Jim's name was mentioned actually in February, when a hedge fund had pressed UP to change its leadership, and so one of them why wait this long, to appoint him as CEO. And I think, kind of as you mentioned, kind of sort of begs a larger question, like, what does it mean for Union Pacific? Is it going to be more? Is it going to kind of go back to sort of the how UP was run when Jim was there, or uh, will it uh, change in any way, especially since things have changed so much in the
Mhm.
last 3 years with a lot of labor issues coming up in terms of ensuring that whether there's enough headcount to power the trains, and stuff like that. So I think
Mhm.
Tony Hatch, what is he saying? So he was saying lots of the CEO appointments have been kind of more marketing people, like Alan Shaw at Norfolk Southern and Tracy Robinson. At CN and Joe Hendriches at CSX.
Mhm.
Tracy Robinson and Joe Hendriches were outsiders of the industry. Both kind of had that marketing background. Of course, Alan Shaw has been at NS for a long time, but still that idea of looking at sort of industry growth through that lens. So it was kind of an interesting choice in a way to for UP to select um, Jim Vena as they did. But I don't know, what do you think?
Yeah, so I think it's an interesting choice. I do think that a very experienced operator that would typically like if this happened, 4 years ago, it would surprise absolutely no one, right? It seems like that was
Mhm.
the obvious choice. I mean, it seemed like that's what people expected when they named him COO at Union Pacific in 2019, and so it always seemed like back in that era and before that the right person to lead a class one railroad, as someone who is really an operator. And I think that sort of stemmed from the fact that Hunter Harrison came from operations, and then Keith Creel, very much kind of a miniature younger Hunter Harrison, learned from him. And so that was sort of the perspective. I mean, I think lately with all the things that happened in the pandemic, which a lot of these were difficult to foresee, like all the labor issues. I don't think anyone expected labor issues to be as severe as they had been, and then the service issues. Those were much more severe than people had been, and of course, Lance Fritz came under a tremendous amount of pressure from in front of the STB for all the service disruptions. I mean, that was really where a lot of the service issues were on the UP. So it is going to be interesting. I mean, does that mean that Union Pacific is going to be more of a PSR railroad than the others? I think time will tell. So with that as sort of one topic down, go read the article. I want to bring on today's guest. It's going to be Chris Joslyn. He's the president of Run Rail Intermodal Company. Chris, thank you for joining us.
Good afternoon.
Yeah, great to have you. Wanted to have you on to talk a little bit about intermodal. For those that are not familiar with Run Rail, can you give us a quick overview?
Yeah, the Run Rail division started, the genesis of it at least started about a year ago, in probably partly because of Schneider moving away from the BNSF to the UP. I think, anytime a
Mhm.
vacuum is created, people try to fill that vacuum, and that's one of the things the ownership group decided to do. At our core, we're a 53-foot domestic container provider in the
Mhm.
United States, Mexico, and Canada. And we're just getting
Mhm.
our feet wet. But we see, the ownership has a long-term vision. They want to get to,
Mhm.
thousands of containers in the next 5 or 6 years. Now, we could have started at a better time, probably, right? So,
Mhm.
because a
Mhm.
lot of people have stuff stacked, but
Uh-huh.
that's part of the industry and the volatility that we've seen over the last couple of years. But we uh, really have a need to get out, not just with the IMC world and provide containers for them, but to really adopt a philosophy of collaboration with the 3PLs and brokers out there, and those that have
Mhm.
had maybe just a toe in the water as far as intermodal is concerned, but they need
Mhm.
the expertise, not just as a piece of equipment, but actually a team of people that have the experience we do. So that's the direction we're going. 5 months in for me, and it's been quite the ride so far.
Yeah, and you have a team that really has a lot of experience in the intermodal industry. I mean, we give us people a sort of rundown of that. I thought that was impressive.
Yeah, we've brought on a couple people that have serious experience with the railroads themselves. Mr. Mark Shepard from KCS is our most recent hire. They of course, have the KCS and the CP going through that particular merger, created some opportunities for some people that wanted to explore a more entrepreneurial direction to do so. And we were
Hmm.
lucky enough to get Mark over with the team. We've got a team of about 5 people on the marketing and operational side that have, I think the least amount of tenure in the industry is about 25 years. So, and you
Hmm.
can tell by the gray in my beard that I have about that much in myself. So, it's a great thing to have young people entering our business sphere that really look at analytics, look at the numbers, and can drive efficiencies in that manner. But you need to layer that with people that have the kind of experience that our team is being put together with.
Yeah, so it's interesting. You said that some of this got started because Schneider moved its business from BN to UP. We've seen that from other companies too. They don't want to be a second-class citizen because they're so close with JB Hunt, and so that left excess capacity on the UP, and so you were able to go in and be that provider. I mean, left excess capacity in BN. I'm sorry, and so that leaves excess availability for you to be the retailer of that. Am I getting that right?
Well, that's certainly the idea. I think in our market today, excess capacity is not really. It's something that's everywhere, right? There, all the equipment providers have stacked containers all over the country, and the thing that's interesting, being as long as I have in this business, is you see things cycle over time. You know it's coming. Our economy and the infrastructure around the intermodal industry is too strong not to come out of things in, I think, fairly short order still. We've got, rough roads ahead, as I think anyone would dictate. And, as far as the BNSF and having Schneider move off the BNSF and providing that void, if you will, JB can obviously fill that void. They're a monster.
Mhm.
They're still growing. They've added a lot of containers to their fleet, and they are by far and away the largest intermodal container provider, especially on the BNSF. They could have absorbed anything that Schneider left behind. At least I believe over time they could. But having said that,
Mhm.
I'm sure the BNSF, and they haven't told me this, but I'm sure the BNSF doesn't want to be, as they say, a one-trick pony. So having
Mhm.
other suppliers like ourselves is real important. Having said that, though, we don't want to be just a commodity, right? We don't want to just
Mhm.
be
Mhm.
another container that the IMCs will look toward as a part of the myriad of different containers that all just have different stenciling, different paint, right? So the whole idea is to differentiate ourselves from that competition by actually integrating ourselves with the transportation intermediaries that we deal with and really helping them solve problems. And I think that's everybody that's on the team now has had that type of experience over their careers. They've gone in all these transportation intermediaries have challenges. We all do, right? From the IMC world on. And having people come in and want to collaborate, not just want to hand off a container, but want to collaborate, understand what their challenges are, and help provide solutions is the real goal.
Mhm. So is your clientele primarily the transportation intermediaries, so 3PLs, brokers, or is it the shippers themselves? And are you targeting a certain niche in that community?
Not any of the shippers. That we leave up to the
Okay.
brokers, the IMCs, et cetera. We do not call them BCOs. I mean, certainly if one of our clients wants us to present a deeper dive into what we have available for their client, then we certainly will collaborate with them on that. But we are definitely focused on the transportation intermediaries. Now, we have
Mhm.
our core has centered around the BNSF solution. We've
Mhm.
just recently completed an agreement with the CSX, so we'll be expanding that geography. We have in place some agreements with the CPKC, and we actually have a footprint in Mexico that we're developing. And I think right now, with the business the way it is, everybody's looking for turning over every rock to try to create revenue and margin, and we're the same, of course. Now we only have 650 boxes at the moment, but we are
Mhm.
in the process of adding another couple hundred to that immediately. So we're real serious about the next 4, 5, 6 years of expansion. Now we just have to make sure the industry complies, right? And gets back to some kind of normalcy,
Mhm.
even if it is normalcy of 2019 versus 2022, right?
And how
And
did you
I'm
find
curious,
that
like
process
when you
of go ahead, I've been asking all the questions. Yeah.
no, I was just curious. When you're talking about expansion, is it in terms of like expanding capacity or expanding boxes, or can you maybe explain a little bit more what you mean by your plans in the next in the upcoming years?
Yeah. Well, I'm talking about the equipment capacity.
Okay.
It's 53-foot domestic equipment containers. And, again, that is something there are minor differences between one container manufacturer and another, but a box is a box is a box when you're in the IMC world looking to move capacity from one geography to another and balance your network. And we of course, want to do the same thing, but we don't want to just be on the BNSF footprint. Right now,
Mhm.
as we begin this process, as we grow, we certainly are focused in on that, the key corridors in the United States that are heavy shipping lanes we apply to, the LA to Chicago, Texas, Memphis, and back, and all that kind of thing. But we want to expand in two ways. We want to expand our overall capacity, and we have I don't know the exact number yet, but we are in negotiation with the purchase of another additional 200-300 boxes to try to get closer to that 1,000 mark and before the end of the year. And then we have plans to grow way beyond that into several thousand over the next 5, 6 years. But on top
Mhm.
of that, to your question, we want to expand our geography as well. We have a lot of IMCs that are looking to move cross country. And having that CSX relationship will allow us to move that freight in a more efficient manner.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. How are you finding rail service right now?
Well, rail service is actually pretty good. The BNSF I've done some comparisons in certain lanes, and I won't divulge those because I don't want to detract from anybody's service that's out there. Certainly, our
Mhm.
service is way better than it was. When I say our service, I
Mhm.
mean the railroads
Mhm. Mhm.
is way better overall than it was, a year plus ago. But one of the
Mhm.
interesting issues that people don't think about when the service improves, when you're making your schedules or even coming in before the scheduled rail times, what you're doing is you're creating even a larger capacity problem. Because if your trains are running a little bit slower or right on
Mhm.
schedule instead of faster, then you can start unstacking equipment and using more of it. So it's an interesting balance that occurs. And
Mhm.
I think that the railroads in general have always looked at the capacity of their partnerships and with the UP with their own equipment, which kind of has been one of the major drags in the year to year comparisons. If you look at the data out there through Q2 at least, that
Mhm.
the rail owned containers are really kind of pulling the overall numbers even further down than maybe they would have normally. But
Mhm.
overall, capacity is capacity, and if it's sitting off to the side and you're playing economics with the supply and demand curve, you have to be patient, and we certainly are that.
Yeah, that's good. So it does seem like, I mean, a lot of brokers are primarily focused on the highway, would like to do more intermodal. You do have to get the container from somewhere. It does give you an option when you have a niche player that can provide not just the container, but can, connect the dots, and just understands all of the, sort of issues that go along with intermodal, the more points of handling, things that can go wrong, all of those things. So it definitely can see how, this fills a niche.
You hit that right on the head. These brokers and these 3PLs, many of them focus on that road move simply because their careers have revolved around that simple cent per mile kind of introduction to a customer. It's very, very quick, very transactional. You can hit the spot market real well. Intermodal, it requires a little bit of um, more attention to the detail. The drayage side of things, not only the container selection, the lane selection, the rail schedules. There's a lot more involved. but frankly, our country is going in a direction that you can see the need for further rail expansion. The BNSF is certainly putting a huge amount of money into like the Barstow facility that's going in, and some of the double and triple tracking things that they've got going on, and all the railroads are kind of in the mode of redesign. And I think that eventually will come out to a lot better efficiency, a lot more freight being pulled from the long haul road components into this kind of venue.
Yeah. A year or so ago, maybe a couple of years ago, the chassis availability was a huge issue, and drayage availability was a huge issue, and the congestion and the inland terminals was a big issue. Have those all been alleviated, and do you see any of those as sort of being drags going forward?
Yeah, certainly the chassis issues. A lot of this stuff has to do with the types of chassis you're involved with. One of the biggest chassis issues I ran into a couple of years ago was really more on the ISO box side of things, the 40 and 20 footer side of things. But when things get out of, our network is robust, certainly in the United States. It's better than anywhere else in the world you could look to. But it also, in my opinion, needs to be more nimble, needs to be more resilient. Always has. It's one thing to have a worldwide pandemic. That's, cataclysmic to almost any kind of infrastructure and delicate balance that goes on within any industry. But when you see, a labor strike or some kind of disruption in transportation flow internationally, the ripple effect into our domestic infrastructure is pretty incredible to watch. And I don't have the magic bullet to cure all that. I don't think anybody does, but I do think that large data sets, looking at analytics real closely, trying to forecast better based on a lot of these variable components is going to help the industry overall. It's got to get more resilient somehow or another.
Speaking of forecasting, any reason to think there's going to be any meaningful intermodal peak season this fall, or is it going to be another muted season like last year?
Yeah, well, my history is originally with the Hub Group in the IMC world, and then my own 3PL. So when I hear the word peak, I used to get real excited about the idea of just, I was going to say tearing my hair out, but as you can see, I did that many years ago. So the peak this year, I think, will be speed bump. The one thing I will say is that I love to look at data about consumer confidence, about political cycles, things like that, because I think there's a momentum factor in our economy. Our economy revolves. I mean, we're a country of consumers, right? And even when some of those things we're consuming become incredibly more expensive, we both adapt to that and we alter the types of things we purchase, but we continue to purchase. And consumer confidence is actually ticking up a little bit. And when that happens, especially as you start to move into the Q3, Q4, you're going to see a lot of purchasing. I think I read an article the other day about the Prime Day that occurred in July. I can't remember which day that was, but that it was actually better than anticipated and kind of as a, hopefully a harbinger of good things to come. So you can go and look at people parsing the numbers and come up with a lot of horrible things to spin it on and some great things to spin it on. I'm kind of a cup half full guy. At least I'd like to think I am. And in our industry, especially when you have a lot of capacity stacked at the moment and trying to move it around, you better be a cup half full guy. And it will change. It will continue to get better. But peak, to your question, I think a speed bump.
It's a good way to put it. Speed bump.
Yeah. And, I said something a second ago about creating ripples in the industry when some of these disruptions happen. I think some of them are more like tsunamis these days, right? This yellow issue that has really, I don't know if, I think people were holding out hope that they could survive again, but that's a lot of jobs, a lot of transportation related and driver jobs, union high paying jobs that have just
Mhm.
instantly evaporated. And I know that's a different segment than we're talking about today, but
Mhm.
there are more than just ripples that occur with situations like that. And, our industry is robust enough to adjust to all these things, but we have to go through a lot of pain first. And that's unfortunate. That was like probably my first conversation with the ownership group when I came to RunRail 5 months ago. I said, are you prepared for a little bit of pain? Not a little bit, a lot of pain for this year. And, the reason I joined the team is truly because they had a vision that was 5 and 10 years out, not 1 year
Mhm.
at a time. And that's
Mhm.
something I love, because a lot of us get caught up in that quarterly cycle, what's announced on Wall Street, what's going on next. Those are important things, but having a long view is, I think, even more important to our country.
Yeah, I think that's completely right. Appreciate all the insights. We are about out of time. How do people reach out to you and get in touch with RoadRail?
Yeah, RunRail is, you can go to,
RunRail, I mean.
yeah, RunRail, that's okay. You can go to run-rail.com, and you can contact us through the site. You can also get me on LinkedIn. Name's Chris Joslyn. And you can find me fairly active on there. You can go to the website from there. You can reach out through, all those types of platforms to us. And we're ready and willing to not just provide a container, but to provide what we believe is an expertise in the industry that can help you as a company become even better in a very volatile industry.
Sounds good. Great. Thanks very much for being on.
Thank
Hope
you
everyone has a
very
great day.
much.